So I said we'd go into a little bit of a day in the life. Why don't we just put both Joe and Paula in our minds as members that are due for or have the opportunity for that colon cancer screening. Maybe that's something that they've never gotten while they're on our plan. What is the likelihood, just even at a visceral gut reaction level, of us sending one version of the letter as Joe has received it, and then sending effectively the exact same information, but structured just slightly differently through the lens of behavioral principles, and we send Paula's letter? I think, again, most of us would look even across the room at these two pinned up on the wall and say, I'd probably have a little bit more engagement with the way that Paula has done this. And it absolutely bears out in what we've seen. So maybe an existing message can get a Joe to do a very low bar of engagement. And maybe that gets an app download, or it gets someone to create an online account with a portal. But the more we're leaning on the learnings of that tested message, the more we can have an influence with that member as we get into actions that might take a little bit more nudging, or that might take a little bit more effort. We've established that base and they know how to read our communications. So when we start to say, same information, same amount of paper, same amount for postage, but a 25%, and depends differently on if we're talking about app downloads or cancer screenings, but these really pronounced examples of, man, that wasn't that much harder to talk to Paula, how Paula really felt was the right way to be communicated with, and to see those actions uptick, it starts to feel like the low-hanging fruit that we should be picking. So we think about it from a micro perspective, a Joe and a Paula kind of in their experience. But if we do go back to being business leaders of our health plan, then it's important to zoom out and say, well, what is the macro effect? And if I'm pulling a few different parts of what we've discussed today, it's not just Joe and it's not just Paula. It's the difference in, we sent out a million kits, and we saw either a 10% completion of the requested call to action in those kits, or we saw a 12% or a 17%. Now, this starting point and then this percent increase that we're seeing with the treated letters, it's a nice example of what Clarity has seen in market. You may be starting off with a really rock star letter and you're at 14%, but you want to bump it up to 18%. Maybe this is the first time you've looked at it and you don't even know where you're starting. The point is, we can start to do this in a more sophisticated way without having to do that much more lift. But ultimately, this becomes an exercise in, well, can you prove it?